Sometimes a single look, just one quick moment between two people, can speak louder than any speech. And when one of those people is the President of the United States, and the other is a young Marine carrying the weight of duty, that moment can echo far beyond the scene. It was one of those crisp, clear days with a sky so blue it almost stung your eyes. What unfolded on the tarmac that morning was something no one could have predicted, especially not the two men at the center of it. Before we dive into this powerful moment, drop a God bless our troops in the comments to show your support, and tell us where you're watching from. At Fort Courage, the energy was electric, helicopters humming overhead, tight security, and every service member standing tall. President Trump had arrived, ready to boost morale, shake hands, and show he was back in full command. But for Sergeant Michael Davies, the day felt heavier. Something was different. He was the kind of Marine everyone trusted, sharp, disciplined, boots polished like glass, uniform crisp down to the last fold. Sergeant Michael Davies loved his country, loved the Corps. But today something felt different. A quiet weight pressed on him, one he couldn't shake. Just hours before the President's arrival, it happened, near the main gate during a routine check. A woman approached him, her eyes rimmed red, her face lined with a deep, quiet grief. Mrs. Henderson, a Gold Star widow, her husband, a decorated Marine, had given everything for his country, leaving behind her and their two young children. She wasn't loud or angry, just trembling with emotion as she clutched a worn photo of her husband in full dress blues. She'd seen a memo, heard whispers about changes coming. A new directive that would shift how support benefits for Gold Star families were handled. Not a headline-making cut, but one of those quiet policy tweaks that meant fewer resources for things like counseling, education aid, or family support. Small losses that together meant a lot. "Sergeant," she said softly, "I just don't want to be forgotten." "They don't understand," she'd said, her voice breaking. "This isn't just paperwork. These aren't numbers on a spreadsheet. This is about making sure our kids remember their father, that they grow up knowing he was a hero and that his country hasn't forgotten him." Her voice cracked on that last word, and Sergeant Davies had felt something shift inside him. "The President's here today," she added. "He always says he supports us, but does he even know about this? Does he know what this change will do to families like mine?" Davies hadn't known what to say. He was just a sergeant. What real power did he have? He'd handed her a bottle of water, listened with quiet respect, and took her name, promising to look into it. But deep down, he knew how slow and indifferent the machinery of government could be, how easily it rolled over those without a voice. That moment stuck with him. This wasn't politics, this was pain. And now, as Marine One descended onto the tarmac in a whirlwind of noise and wind, Davies stood in the honor guard, knowing the man who held the power to fix it all would soon be just steps away. He was part of the greeting detail, hand-picked for his sharp uniform, composed posture, and spotless record. His M4 rested perfectly at attention, his eyes fixed ahead. But inside, Mrs. Henderson's words wouldn't let go. He could still see her tear-streaked face, the quiet anguish in her voice. Then came the familiar sight. President Trump, stepping off Marine One, his dark suit sharp against the wind, red tie fluttering, waving confidently to the gathered troops and officials. He moved down the line with practiced ease, handshakes, shoulder pats, thumbs-ups, clearly in his element. The base commander flanked him, along with a wall of Secret Service agents and White House aides. Davies stood at rigid attention as the President approached, offering salutes and greetings to each service member in turn. "Welcome to Fort Courage, Mr. President," echoed up and down the line. But Davies felt the pressure in his chest tighten. He couldn't step out of line, couldn't shout the story of a grieving widow into the air. That wasn't how Marines handled things. Discipline, order, protocol. Yet the memory of her trembling hands clutching that photo, her children's future flickering in the balance, weighed heavier than any gear he'd ever carried. Next to him, Corporal Rodriguez glanced over for a split second, sensing something was off. "You okay, Davies?" Rodriguez whispered, lips barely moving, eyes still locked ahead. Davies gave the smallest nod, his throat tight. He was thinking about duty, honor, promises made, and the ones quietly broken. Then President Trump was in front of him. The president stopped, eyes, startlingly sharp and blue, briefly scanning Davies. This was the moment. The handshake. The photo. The show of unity. The president's hand landed firmly on Davies' shoulder, a practiced gesture of connection. Cameras clicked. Aides nodded, satisfied. This was the image they'd come for. Commander-in-Chief with a proud young Marine. Normally, Davies would have returned the gesture with a steady, "Good to have you here, sir," and a clean smile. But in that moment, something shifted. He didn't smile. His face stayed still, respectful, but heavy. His eyes met the president's, and lingered just a heartbeat longer. In that split second, he didn't speak of Mrs. Henderson. He didn't have to. He let his expression carry it all. Her pain, her fear, the weight of what those bureaucratic changes really meant. His look was quiet, not defiant, but clear. Do you know? Do you see what this does to them? It was a risk, but one he felt he had to take. A silent, desperate plea. Davies wasn't challenging the president or showing disrespect. He was simply a messenger for a pain that needed to be seen, a sorrow begging for acknowledgement. He hoped, even prayed, that the man before him, the one who often spoke of his deep respect for the military and their families, would look past the uniform, past the photo op, and recognize the real human story Davies was conveying with his eyes. For a brief moment, everything else, the roar of jets, the crowd's chatter, the camera clicks, faded away. It was just Davies standing tall and the president, his hand still resting on the Marine's shoulder. Trump, known for his quick remarks and commanding presence, seemed to pause, his usual confident smile faltering almost imperceptibly. His eyes, which had been scanning the line, stayed fixed on Davies a moment longer. Did he catch the unspoken message in that gaze? Was there surprise, annoyance, or even understanding? There was no way to tell. Then, as quickly as it came, the moment slipped away. The president gave Davies' shoulder one last, firmer pat, almost like shaking off whatever he'd just felt, and moved on. He gave a curt nod and moved on to the next Marine in line. The event's rhythm picked back up, handshakes, smiles, photo ops business as usual. Davies exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His legs felt a bit unsteady. Had he done the right thing? Had he even done anything at all? Or was that flicker in the president's eyes just his imagination? He had followed protocol, technically said nothing out of place, but deep down he knew he had sent a message. Corporal Rodriguez glanced at him, curious. Davies gave a barely noticeable shake of his head. Not now. The rest of the president's visit passed in a blur. Speeches were made, awards handed out, and Trump spoke with his usual fervor about American strength and commitment to the military. Davies went through the motions, but his mind kept returning to that brief, intense moment on the tarmac. A strange mix of anxiety and faint hope settled over him. He'd done what he could in the only way he knew. Now it was out of his hands. Later that afternoon, as President Trump prepared to leave, he held a quick press gaggle near Marine One. Reporters shouted questions about the economy, foreign policy, the usual topics. The president answered with his trademark confidence, deflecting some and embracing others. Then a local reporter, perhaps tipped off by someone on base or simply searching for a human interest story, asked, "Mr. President, you often speak about supporting our military families. Are there any new initiatives or reviews planned to ensure they're receiving everything they need, especially our Gold Star families?" It was a routine question, one that could have been answered with a rehearsed response, but President Trump paused. His eyes drifted over the crowd, distant for a moment as if he was recalling something, maybe the face of a young Marine. He adjusted his microphone and said, "You know, we love our military families. We love our Gold Star families. They've given everything, and we have to make sure we're doing right by them 100%. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, We're always reviewing things, always, and frankly, we're going to take a very, very strong look at how we support those families, making sure every promise is kept, every single one. We'll be reviewing some of those programs. Believe me, things can always get better, and we're going to make them better. It wasn't a concrete policy change or a specific promise, but it was something, a small crack in the door, a signal. Reporters scribbled notes while aides exchanged cautious glances. Was this a real shift in direction or just Trump being Trump, making an offhand comment? Back at the barracks, Davies caught the president's words replayed on the common room TV. His heart lifted at the mention of reviewing support for military families and keeping every promise. Could his silent plea, the desperate look he'd shared with the president, actually have made a difference? He thought of Mrs. Henderson and hoped she was watching, hoping this vague statement would bring her some comfort, a sign that someone was paying attention. Of course, Davies knew better than to expect miracles. Washington was complicated, and policies were messy. But for the first time that day, the heavy weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. He had tried. He had spoken in his own way, for those who couldn't. In the weeks that followed, no major announcements came right away. Analysts debated the president's remarks. Some saw genuine empathy, a leader moved by his people's needs. Others dismissed it as typical political talk. Trump's words were likely a savvy political move, a way to seem compassionate without committing to anything concrete, a way to please a key group of supporters. The truth, as always, probably lay somewhere in between, or maybe it was something entirely different. Sergeant Davies never found out what truly prompted the president's remarks. He never received a call from the White House. He simply returned to his duties as a dedicated Marine, watching out for his fellow soldiers. But whenever he saw a gold star flag or thought of Mrs. Henderson, that moment on the tarmac came back. The president's hand on his shoulder, the unspoken message lingering between them. And he allowed himself a small measure of hope that, even in a world ruled by power and politics, a single honest plea, spoken with quiet desperation and a lot of heart, could sometimes make a real difference. He knew, and maybe President Trump did too, that true strength isn't measured by weapons or wealth, but by a nation's willingness to listen to the silent sorrows of its people, especially those who have sacrificed the most. So, what do you think about that moment on the tarmac? Can a single silent plea truly reach the heart of power, or was it just a fleeting moment in a busy day? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want more like it, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss an update. We appreciate you.